I want to start today with a story about a beetle, specifically the Australian jewel beetle.
Okay.
It's this big, shiny, orange-brown bug, and honestly, its life is a bit of a tragedy.
A tragedy. That's a strong way to open a story about a bug.
It really is. See, the male jewel beetle has a very, very simple mission in life.
Yeah.
Find a female, mate, pass on his genes. That's it.
Right. The biological imperative.
But a few years back, researchers noticed something bizarre. These beetles were ignoring real, living female beetles. They were literally flying right past them to try and mate with discarded beer bottles on the side of the road.
Ah, yes. I know this study. It's a classic case of biology just going completely haywire.
It's wild. They'd swarm these bottles. They'd try to mate with the cold glass until they died of exhaustion or, got eaten by ants. And the question is just, why? Why choose glass over a real partner?
Well, because to the beetle's primitive brain, the beer bottle was the ultimate female. It was bigger, it was shinier, and the glass had these little bumps near the base that looked just like the dimples on a female beetle, only, exaggerated.
A supernormal stimulus.
Exactly. It's what biologists call a supernormal stimulus. The bottle was just sexier than the real thing, and the beetle's brain just couldn't process the difference.
And that right there, that biological glitch, is exactly why we're here today. Because we're going to talk about how the modern human brain, when it's faced with high-speed internet pornography, is acting exactly like that beetle on the beer bottle.
It is a striking parallel. And it's really the core theme of the book we're covering,
Yeah.
Your Brain on Porn by Gary Wilson. This book made huge waves because it took a topic that usually gets bogged down in morality or religion,
Right.
and it looked at it strictly through the lens of neuroscience.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. I want to be super clear. This isn't about preaching. We're not here to judge your browser history or debate the ethics of the industry. We just want to unpack the mechanics. We're looking at peer-reviewed studies from places like Cambridge, the Max Planck Institute, and combining that with thousands of self-reports from recovery forums to understand what happens when these ancient brain circuits meet modern, high-speed delivery systems.
And the short answer is, it's not good. It turns out our brains, they just aren't evolved to handle the internet. We're running Stone Age software on Space Age hardware.
So let's get into the wiring. If I look at a magazine or a static photo, my brain reacts. People have been looking at erotica for thousands of years. But Wilson argues that streaming video modern tube sites is a completely different beast. Why? What makes the infinite scroll so much more dangerous than, say, a Playboy from 1990?
It really comes down to a biological quirk called the Coolidge effect. And there's a famous story about this involving President Calvin Coolidge.
Oh, I love this story. Lay it on us.
The story goes the president and his wife were touring a government farm. Mrs. Coolidge sees a rooster mating, and she asks the farmer how often it happened. The farmer says, dozens of times a day. She's impressed. She says, please tell that to the president.
Subtle.
Very. So the president hears this, he thinks for a second, and he asks, same hen every time? The farmer says, oh no, sir, a different hen every time. And Coolidge just replies, tell that to Mrs. Coolidge.
Ouch. But okay, aside from the marital burn, what's the biological takeaway here?
The takeaway is that for male mammals, and this has been shown in rats, rams, humans, sexual satiety is specific to a partner. A rat will mate with one female until he's just bored. He's done. Can't perform.
Right.
But if you drop a new female into the cage, boom, he's instantly revived. His refractory period just vanishes.
Because the brain is hardwired for genetic variety.
Exactly. Novelty triggers dopamine. And this is where internet porn really weaponizes our biology. In the old days, with a magazine or DVD, you were eventually stuck with the same hen, so to speak. You habituated. You got bored.
But a tube site is just an endless conveyor belt of novelty.
Infinite novelty.
You can just click from video to video, tab to tab. You never have to stick with one thing. If you get bored for even a second, you just click away.
And that clicking, that searching, is crucial. We used to think dopamine was the pleasure molecule, the reward you get after you eat the donut.
Yeah.
But the neuroscience shows that's wrong. Dopamine is actually the seeking molecule. It's the fuel for the hunt.
Wait, so the high isn't the finish line. The high is the search.
Precisely. It's the anticipation. When you're scrolling through thumbnails, looking for that quote-unquote perfect clip, opening 10 tabs at once, that is when your dopamine is just screaming. You are in a state of high arousal seeking, and the internet keeps you in that hunting mode for hours.
That makes so much sense. It's why you can spend 2 hours looking for something to watch on Netflix and feel exhausted, but with porn, that search is actually the addictive part of the loop.
Correct. And because the content on the screen is hyper-edited perfect bodies, acts that defy physics, high-def close-ups, it becomes the beer bottle. It's shinier than reality. It's a level of stimulation that just doesn't exist in the natural world.
So we've got this supernormal stimulus bombarding the brain. What does that actually do to the wiring? Because we hear the word addiction thrown around a lot.
Right.
People say, oh, I'm addicted to coffee or TikTok. But are we talking about like actual physical changes in the brain?
Structurally, yes, absolutely. The source material points to a fundamental principle of neuroscience. Nerve cells that fire together wire together.
The brain is plastic.
The brain is plastic. It's like a trail in the woods. The more you walk it, the wider and clearer that path becomes until it's a paved highway. When you flood the reward center with this porn-induced dopamine, you trigger a specific protein called delta phosB.
Delta phosB, that sounds like a sci-fi villain.
It sort of acts like one. Think of it as a molecular switch for addiction. See, when you experience natural rewards, most proteins in the brain dissipate quickly. But with chronic overstimulation from cocaine, meth, or, yes, binge-watching porn, delta phosB hangs around, it accumulates.
And what does it do?
Its job is to physically alter the neural pathways to make that specific behavior easier and more likely to repeat.
So it's basically a construction crew building a superhighway in your brain that leads directly back to the laptop.
That's a great way to put it. It creates a craving that feels like a survival need. The research shows the brain changes in chronic porn users are anatomically and chemically similar to what we see in drug addictions. It hijacks the exact same machinery.
Okay, so this leads to 3 specific changes, right, that explain why it's so hard to quit.
Yes, 3 major ones.
Let's break these down because I think this is where the why really clicks for people. What's the first one?
The first is desensitization. Imagine you're in a room with a really loud fan. At first, it's super annoying, but after an hour, you don't even hear it. Your brain just tunes it out.
You go deaf to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you blast your brain with that much dopamine, the brain panics. It says, this is too much, I'm going to burn out. So it downregulates. It physically removes dopamine receptors. You literally have fewer ears to hear the message.
Which means you need more stimulation just to feel normal.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That is tolerance. And this explains the escalation we see in the data. Users start with what they call vanilla content. But over years, that just stops working. So they move to harder, more extreme, more shocking content. Not necessarily because they like it, but because they need the shock value to get any dopamine flow at all.
That's terrifying. You're watching stuff you might even find morally gross just to feel a pulse. Okay, so that's desensitization. What's number 2?
Number 2 is sensitization. Now, this seems contradictory, but stick with me. While the brain gets numb to the pleasure, it becomes hypersensitive to the cues.
The triggers.
Yes, the triggers. If you always use your laptop in your bedroom at 11 p.m., the brain wires those things together. So the moment you walk into the bedroom or just see the laptop, the addiction pathway lights up like a Christmas tree. It's a Pavlovian response. You might not even be horny, but your brain is screaming, it's time.
So you're numb to the enjoyment, but you're a slave to the trigger. That sounds exhausting.
It's a constant tug of war. And the third change makes it almost impossible to win that war. It's called hypofrontality.
Hypofrontality, that refers to the frontal cortex.
Frontal cortex, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the CEO of your brain. It handles willpower, judgment, long-term planning, basically saying no. In addicts, blood flow to this area actually restricts. The activity drops.
So the part of your brain that says, don't do this, you have a meeting in the morning, basically goes offline.
It weakens a lot. It's like the brakes on your car failing exactly when you're speeding down a steep hill. This is why users say they feel like they're watching themselves from the outside screaming, stop, internally. But their hands are still typing the URL. It's a physiological failure of impulse control.
That explains so much about the relapse cycle. It's not just a lack of willpower, it's that the willpower muscle itself has atrophied.
Precisely.
So we have a rewired brain, high tolerance, huge triggers, no breaks. How does this actually manifest in someone's real life? Because the book makes a big point that this isn't just about spending too much time online. This ruins relationships.
It does. The most glaring symptom, and usually the one that finally scares men into seeking help, is sexual dysfunction. Specifically something called PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
And we're not talking about older guys with heart issues here, are we?
No, not at all. We're talking about guys in their teens and 20s. Biologically, they should be in their absolute prime. High testosterone, everything works physically, but they get into bed with a real living partner and nothing.
That feels like such a paradox. If they're watching hours of sex, shouldn't they be more ready for it?
You'd think so. But go back to that fire together, wired together principle. Their brains have been conditioned to a very specific set of inputs. A glowing screen, clicking a mouse, jumping from scene to scene, being voyeur.
And a real partner doesn't offer any of that.
A real partner is static.
Hmm.
They don't have a mute button or a zoom function. Real sex is, it can be awkward, it's emotional, it has smells and sounds. Compared to the 4K high-speed novelty of the screen, it's boring.
Boring. That's hard to hear.
To a desensitized brain, yes. The volume of real life isn't loud enough to wake up their fried dopamine receptors. The beetle is looking for the shiny bottle, and the real female just looks dull.
That's tragic. The brain literally doesn't recognize real intimacy as a sexual trigger anymore. But it gets even darker. The source material talks about guys questioning their whole identity because of this escalation.
It does. This is called HOCD, or SOCD, sexual orientation, obsessive compulsive disorder. Remember escalation. Users need more shock value to get a hit. So a straight man might start watching gay porn or violent porn or really obscure fetishes.
And they panic. They think, oh my God, does this mean I'm actually into this?
Right. They spiral into anxiety. But Wilson argues that for many, it's not a genuine attraction. It's the brain just hunting for a jolt. The forbidden nature of it spikes the dopamine. And we know this because when these men quit porn, those specific fetishes often just disappear completely.
They were just chasing the high, not the content?
Exactly. Chasing the rush, not the reality.
But let's zoom out. If your dopamine system is fried, that can't just stay in the bedroom. That has to bleed into everything. Your job, your friendships.
Absolutely. The reward system governs your motivation for everything. When you downregulate your dopamine receptors, you experience what's called anhedonia.
The inability to feel pleasure.
Correct. Think about natural rewards. A sunset, a good meal, listening to music, laughing with friends. These release modest amounts of dopamine. But if your baseline is set to the nuclear explosion of internet porn, those little sparks just don't register.
So the world just feels gray, flat.
Exactly. Users report intense brain fog, a total lack of focus, and social anxiety. And the anxiety makes perfect sense. Socializing takes effort. If your brain feels the reward of talking to a human is low compared to the reward of the screen, it will signal you to just stay home. It isolates you.
Okay, I think we've thoroughly depressed everyone. The diagnosis is bleak. We're zombies with broken brakes. But the book is actually very hopeful. It says this isn't permanent damage.
It's not permanent. And that's the beauty of neuroplasticity. It works both ways. If the brain can be wired, it can be rewired.
Which brings us to the reboot. What does that actually look like? Is it as simple as just installing a web blocker and hoping for the best?
Conceptually, it's simple, but it is a huge commitment. The reboot involves giving the brain a complete rest from all artificial sexual stimulation. No porn, and usually for a period, no masturbation to porn fantasies. You have to starve the monster.
But practically speaking, that sounds like a nightmare if you're addicted.
It is, and we need to be real about this. Withdrawal is awful. The sources are filled with reports of insomnia, extreme irritability, anxiety, mood swings that come out of nowhere.
It's like quitting smoking or caffeine.
Or harder substances, yeah. The brain is screaming for its fix. But there is one phase of the reboot that freaks people out more than anything else. It's called the flat line.
The flat line. This part really stuck with me. You quit porn to get your sex drive back, and then it just dies completely.
It vanishes. You go from being hyperstimulated to having zero libido. Your genitals can feel lifeless. It's a dead zone.
I can just imagine the panic. You'd think, I broke my brain and now I've killed it forever.
That is exactly what they think. They think they've chemically castrated themselves. And the real danger is that they rush back to porn just to test if everything still works. Let me just watch one clip to see if I react. And boom, relapse.
So what's actually happening during the flat line? Why does the brain do that?
It's healing. It's recalibrating. The brain is no longer being flooded with artificial stimulation, but it hasn't yet regrown the receptors to appreciate natural stimulation. You're in the valley between those two worlds.
It's like when you take off really dark sunglasses and the regular light hurts your eyes or you can't see properly for a minute.
That is a great analogy. You just have to wait for your eyes or your receptors to adjust. If you can push through the flat line, which can take weeks, sometimes months, the other side is where the magic happens.
The superpowers. Now that sounds like internet hyperbole, but the reports are pretty consistent in the recovery forums.
They are. I mean, I prefer to call it baseline functioning, but to someone who's been numb for a decade, it feels like a superpower. Users report the brain fog just lifting. They can focus on complex tasks again. They have more energy.
And the social stuff.
That's the big one. They report being able to make eye contact again without feeling that shame or anxiety. Their voice can get deeper because their confidence is back. And crucially, their attraction to real people returns. That vanilla interaction that seemed boring becomes exciting again.
Because the sensors are working again. The jewel beetle stops trying to mate with the bottle and finally notices the female beetle.
Exactly. They reclaim their ability to connect. And the research suggests that once geltophos B clears out and those pathways weaken, the compulsion fades. It becomes a choice again, not a reflex.
You know what strikes me about all this is that while we're focusing on porn, the underlying mechanic applies to so much of our digital lives. We're living in a supernormal world.
We really are. And that is the broader implication here. Whether it's TikTok algorithms, processed sugar, video games, or porn, we are constantly bombarding a Stone Age brain with Space Age inputs.
We're managing a piece of hardware that evolved for scarcity, and we've dropped it into an environment of just infinite abundance.
And that mismatch is dangerous. We have to ask ourselves, are we protecting our reward circuits? Because if you burn out your dopamine on all the fake stuff, you lose the capacity to enjoy the real stuff. You lose the ability to just sit and watch a sunset without reaching for your phone.
It's about protecting your joy. If you find real life boring, it's probably not a sign that life is boring. It's a sign your volume knob is broken.
Precisely. Reclaiming your brain means being willing to be bored. It means disconnecting. It means letting your sensitivity reset so that the subtle, quiet joys of reality can actually register again.
That's a powerful place to land. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one more thought to chew on. We've talked about how digital inputs can rewire our sexual tastes and our motivation. If the brain can be physically rewired to prefer a pixelated screen over a real living human being, what other parts of our humanity are being subtly edited out by our daily digital consumption without us even noticing?
A disturbing but very necessary question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Take care of your brains out there.
See you next time.